So I didn't plan to make this video. This genuinely wasn't on the schedule. I'm recording it at 2 o'clock in the morning. This was meant to be a reading experience more out of morbid curiosity than anything else that I would move on from. But then I finished this poetry collection, and I just sat there thinking, oh yeah, this is going to bother me if I don't talk about it. So here we are. I'm Darth James, and this is The Bald Book Geek. Okay, this is the new poetry collection by Milo Winter, under the new pen name Milo Prather, which already tells you a lot before you even open the book. And look, I'm not saying this to be snidey. Writers use pen names all the time. Reinventions happen. I get it. But when you already know the previous work, the Age of Scorpius, and the conversation around it, it's impossible not to read this as an attempt to create more distance from that whole situation, to reset, to start fresh. The problem is, the new name doesn't matter if the writing hasn't changed, and unfortunately it hasn't. So let's be real. According to the blurb, this is a fully illustrated poetry collection exploring ghosts in the afterlife as metaphors for trauma, PTSD, self-destructive tendencies, recovery, and preservation. The poems move through the American West to Scandinavia, landscapes, ecosystems, natural phenomena, all running parallel to traumatic memory. On paper, that's a really solid pitch. That's the kind of thing that should work. And it's fully illustrated, and I want to say this really clearly at the start. The illustrations are genuinely beautiful. Full credit to the artist. They're atmospheric, they're thoughtful, emotionally coherent, and that's important because the art ends up doing a lot more work than the poetry does. Let's talk about the pen name. This doesn't feel like a deliberate attempt to just set a new standard. This feels like an attempt to step away from past baggage, and again, I understand the impulse, I really do. But here's the uncomfortable part. You can't escape your weaknesses by changing your name. I'm reading this, it keeps running into the exact same issues I had with Milo Winter's earlier work, over and over again. Before we get into the writing, a few things stood out. It's only available as a paperback, and I get it, ebook don't tend to do very well for books of this format, but seriously? There is a way to format illustrated books to run perfectly well on Kindle. It's just a paperback, that's it. No hardback even. Strange, especially for a poetry collection in 2026. There's exactly one review on Amazon. It's from an Amazon customer. It says, good read, a nice poetry book with good art. And it's noted that the reviewer is based in Canada. Let me be very clear, so nobody clips this out of context. I'm not accusing Milo of writing their own reviews. What I'm saying is, when a book has almost no footprint, a single vague review, it doesn't reassure me, it just reinforces how little engagement this book actually had. Here's the thing. I've read a lot of poetry books, like genuinely embarrassing amount of them at this point. And this isn't the worst one I've read, but it might be the most frustrating because it wants to be profound, it wants that so badly to be deep. This reads like a vanity project, not in the self-publishing equals bad way that people tend to use that word, but in trying to prove something, trying to prove how deep, how wounded, how environmental they are, how introspective the author is. But it never really goes anywhere. Trauma is gestured at, not examined. Recovery is mentioned, not explored. Nature is everywhere, but it's mostly used as wallpaper. Everything stays vague, safe, and untouched. This is where it genuinely fell apart for me. There's a fundamental issue with how language is being used, and I don't say that lightly. Words are used loosely, definitions feel sloppy, meaning drifts instead of lands. Poetry can blend language. That's the point. It can bend it, blend it, move it, do what it wants with it, but you have to have an understanding of how the words work before you start breaking them. Here it feels like the writer is reaching for emotional resonance without understanding why certain words carry weight and others don't. Metaphors stack up. Imaginary metaphors. That's a good way to describe it. The imagery piles on, but nothing sharpens. And instead of feeling abstract in a meaningful way, it just feels unclear. I keep having the same thought while I read it. The art is doing all the emotional heavy lifting. The illustrations tell stories the poems never quite managed to tell. They provide the mood, the coherency, the atmosphere. They give you something to connect to when the text itself starts to blur, and that's not how this should work. The art should enhance the poetry, not rescue it. And we also need to talk about water metaphors. Water is powerful, water is flexible, water is basically poetry shorthand for emotion. But it's used constantly, and it loses impact here. By the halfway point, I started noticing it. By the end, it became numbing. Rivers, currents, tides all blend together in the same emotionless note, played again and again and again, which ties to a bigger issue. There's no progression. This is the part that actually disappointed me, because this book suffers from the exact same problems as The Age of Scorpius. Same looseness with language, same surface level engagement with heavy themes, same sense of wanting to appear profound without actually doing the harder internal work. Yes, it's better edited. Yes, it looks nicer. Yes, the art is genuinely beautiful and I'd quite happily have a print of some of it on my walls. But creatively, there's no real growth, and that's the issue. This doesn't feel like a bold new chapter. It feels like a pause. A holding pattern, a rebrand without a rethink. And again, this isn't about drama, it's about writing. If you can't outpace your limitations by changing your name, you just can't. You can't change the past, you can't change your limitations, and it's very evident here just by changing your name again. I didn't enjoy reading this. It felt hollow in places where it desperately wants to be meaningful. There are fragments here that hint at actually some potential. There is sincerity in the attempt. But intention doesn't equal execution. And if you're going to write about trauma, recovery, and survival across landscapes this vast, you need precision, you need control, you need respect for language. And right now, this book doesn't have that. That's why, pen name or not, it feels like we're still standing in the same place. It's just a better edited version of the book, if that makes sense. So yeah, this was a bonus video. I didn't plan it. I'm never revisiting this book again. But sometimes it's worth talking about the books that don't move forward, because that too is part of the conversation. Anyway, thanks for watching, and if you want to help keep the lights on, you can buy me a coffee or become a channel member, join my Substack, my Patreon, or you can just like and subscribe and tell me what you think. That hype button does a lot of lifting on here. So I'll leave this here and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.